Hey YouTube, this is Justin, and this is a Demonic Sweaters production. Now, I have a special video for you guys today. This is something I've been thinking about for quite a while, and what I want to do is record my own multi-layered samples, like fully dynamic samples of my acoustic drum set, and be able to use them with my Alesis Nitro mesh. Now, there's some softwares that you could do this already, such as Easy Drummer and things like that. But they have like pre-bought samples in them, and there's, basically just a preset of samples. And plus, these softwares are kind of expensive, and I don't really want to spend the money. I want to use what I already have, and what I'm going to do is basically record my own acoustic drum set at multiple volumes, and then chop those up into little samples and layer them all into Ableton Live Sampler and the drum rack, and be able to control that with my Alesis Nitro mesh. Now, in case you're wondering, you can't actually load samples into the Alesis Nitro mesh module. It's impossible to do that, but it does have a MIDI output, USB and hardware MIDI, and you can control software on your computer or your iPad. I've done videos in the past where I showed you how you could do GarageBand and use the drum sounds in GarageBand. And within Ableton even, I showed one about that, and then how to use sound fonts. But what I wanted to do was create the most realistic samples that I possibly can using my own drums. Now, the way to do this is to have different layers of sounds. Sounds that cover the soft hits, the medium hits, and the loud hits of all the different drums that correspond with how hard you're playing the electronic drums. And there is a way to do this in Ableton that I've discovered using some older samples that I had already, but the samples that I recorded, I didn't have enough of a dynamic range to really do what I wanted to do. So what I'm gonna do is set up my acoustic drums here in my apartment and record them one at a time. Hopefully it won't make too much noise to bother my neighbors too much. I'm not gonna be actually playing the drums like beats or anything like that. It's just gonna be hitting one individual drum a few times, so I think I should be able to get away with it, hopefully. Once I do that, I'm going to put them all on the computer, edit them in the ways that I want, and then load them into Ableton and start creating my custom kit within Ableton. So, anyway, hopefully this will go okay. I haven't actually done it yet, so I don't really know what the end result is going to be, but I have a feeling it's going to be really good. Knowing what I know now and doing all the research that I've done, I think it's going to come out really well. So, here we go. First step, I'm going to have to take all of my acoustic drums out of my closet and start miking them up and recording them. So I'm gonna do that first. Okay, so I've got my kick drum set up, and I'm miking it basically through the hole in the front of the bass drum. I have a large hole Aquarian head on there that I had for recording when I still had this in my studio. And I'm using a CAD KBM 412 microphone, just going one channel into my Behringer UMC 404 HD and into Reaper. So the one thing I didn't account for is I'm gonna have to get a recording level. So hopefully that won't take me too long to disturb the neighbors or anything. But I'm gonna go ahead and do that now, and I don't think I'll film that, but I'm gonna do the recording of the kick drum and then move on to the next drums. All right, so now it's on to the rack tom. And now for the toms, and I think the rest of the drums, I'm going to use this mic. It's a Audio-Technica ATM 650, which is pretty similar to an SM57, a good instrument mic. And you'll notice I have the microphone kind of far away from the tom, about 4 or 5 inches. I kind of want to give a little bit of air, a little bit of air in there to give it a little bit more of a room sound. And this is one of the advantages of doing all the drums separately, is you can do stuff like this and not worry about bleed. So, and oh, another thing that I decided to do is I'm going to go with 4 different dynamic sounds per drum. So basically 4 different hits: very soft, medium loud, and loud. And I think that should be good. So continuing on, here we go. All right, so now time to do the floor tom. Might as well record myself doing this one. Let's see. Now, weird thing is I got some kind of weird audio glitch in Reaper on the rack tom, and I had to do it again, and then I got the glitch again, but it doesn't look like it's on the waveform. It seems to be something that's just happening in Reaper, so I hope that when I go to export the file, it's not there. I hope. But it's weird because I did it twice, and it happened at the exact same time both times, which is very odd. But anyway, So let me mute these other channels. That was pretty loud. All right, so on to doing the snare. I was having some problems with Reaper, as I said, so I switched over to using Audacity now, and I imported the files that I recorded already in Reaper, and yeah, the glitches are there, so thankfully I was able to, when I recorded 2 of the rack tom, between the 2 different files, I have enough there to be able to use, or to be able to get some good samples out of. The other ones were fine, but rather than risk it, I just switched over to Audacity. So I'm going to do the snare, and then all I have left to do are the cymbals. Oh, also, in case you're wondering about this odd snare miking technique, basically going in from the side like that, this is something I started doing a long time ago, and it's actually a really, really great way to mic a snare. Now, if you're doing a full drum set, you can get a lot of bleed that way, and that can be not so good sometimes, but fortunately, I'm not doing a whole drum set. And what's great about doing it like this is you get the top and the bottom of the snare drum. You get the snares and the top kind of combined into one mic. So it's a really good way to get that sound. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. All right, so I've moved on to the hi-hats now. Switched up to a condenser mic. This is just a newer NW700 condenser. And I'm recording my 15-inch New Vader hi-hats. And so this one's going to be a little tricky. I want to make sure to get enough dynamic samples for each hi-hat position on the Nitro mesh. There's fully open, halfway open, and then closed, and then a splash, foot splash, as well as foot close sounds. And then I want to get, you know, for the hitting ones, I want to get all the different dynamics that I can. So I just have to make sure to get a lot. All right, so I'm not happy at all with the sound of the newer on the hi-hats. It sounds really dirty, kind of crappy sounding. So I'm going to switch back to the ATM 650. I think it's going to sound better. Ride time. Now for the ride, I think I'm going to record some ride sounds as well as some bell sounds. Okay, I just finished doing the crashes. So now I have to start editing all of these samples. Okay, so now for the editing part. What you're looking at here is all of the recordings here in Audacity. I have everything on a separate track, and everything is muted right now except for the kick drum, which is the first thing I recorded. But if we go down through all of these, you'll see that I have kick, rack tom take 1, rack tom take 2. Those were the ones with the glitches. Floor tom, snare drum, hi-hats, ride cymbal, crash 1 and crash 2. And the ride cymbal has the bell and the ride on the same track there. So now what I have to do is basically turn these all into individual samples and create a directory where I can get them all later when I start creating my drum rack in Ableton. So let's just go ahead and do that. So first off, let's hear this kick drum. That's the quietest one, which is pretty quiet. So there's something that I was thinking about that I'm going to have to figure out. Basically, you know, the quiet sounds, you don't really want to be quieter on the recording, on the samples, because when you're playing the drum, the dynamics of how hard you're hitting the electronic drum will already make it quieter. So these samples are going to have to be kind of all equal in loudness. So in order to do that, I'm trying to decide if I should do that here in Ableton, or sorry, in Audacity, or wait until I get it in Ableton, which I may do it that way, because if I start messing with them here in Audacity, then I won't be able to go back and change them once I have the individual samples. So maybe what I'm going to do is leave them, basically get the level pretty good, you know, for the loudest one, all here in Audacity, and then when I get into Ableton and I'm creating the sample or the drum rack there, I can adjust all the individual volumes the way that I want. So let's go ahead and start with the kick drum then. And so what I'm going to do is highlight this whole kick drum, and there's a little bit of DC offset I noticed on all the tracks that I recorded in Reaper. And what that means is like one side of the waveform, like down here, goes further down. You can see further down than the top. So what I'm going to do to get rid of that first, I can do, I think there's a DC offset remover. Let's see. Click remover, compressor. Let's look down here. Yeah, DC offset remover. So let me do that first. And it didn't do a whole lot. So the other thing I could do here is put a limiter on here, which I want to do anyways, just to give that kick drum a little bit more punch. So let's go down to limiter. I'm not going to go crazy. I just want to, get it. That's probably good. 1.6. All right, let's hear this now. Okay, I want to do that one more time. Let's give that one more push with the limiter. So what we can do is just go up here to repeat limiter. I could have just done Control R, I guess, but now, as far as the EQ goes, I'm pretty happy with it. I think it sounds pretty good. It just sounds like, your basic bass drum, but once it gets all laid in with the other sounds, I think it's going to be fine. So now, basically, to export all these individual samples, the easiest way, we don't have to chop anything up, really. We could just go in here and highlight what we want to export. Go a little bit longer. There we go. And then we're just going to go down here to export, and then we'll go to export selected audio. So now I need to create my samples folder where I'm going to do all this in, or where I'm going to save all these in, rather. And let's put that, I have my terabyte D drive here. And I believe I have, well, all of my samples kind of live in this sound fonts folder, which is kind of a not exactly right for the title, but that's just what I call it. So now I'm going to call these multi-layer, Tama, drums. I don't know why I capitalized drums. 2020. Okay, and this is kick soft. Or I'm wondering if I should just do kick 1 and do 1 through 4 for all the samples. Probably be easier to find them that way. No, soft, more descriptive. Kick soft. Okay, so wave 16-bit is fine. Don't need to tag it. And it's such a small little file, you don't even see it export. It just does it pretty much instantly. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the next one. Highlight what I want to export. And let's say export selected audio again. We'll do kick medium soft. Make sure you get it right where the sample starts, because if you have any blank space before there, it's going to sound off time when you trigger it with your electronic drums. Okay, so this is my medium loud sample. Kick medium loud. Then finally loud, just right there. That sounds pretty good. And that's going to be, most of the hits are going to sound like that, when I'm doing full volume. But to have the variation in there of the different samples and the different volumes, that's how you avoid that machine gunning type sound for electronic drums. So let's go to export, selected audio again. We're going to do kick loud. Okay. All right, so kick drum is done. Now let's move on to rack tom. Okay, so this one I'm going to have to use these two tracks, kind of both. This one looks like it has quite a bit of background noise on it. See all that there? Anyway, let's take a listen. There was definitely something weird going on with Reaper. So rack tom soft. Okay, that one is the one that's messed up. Medium soft. The rest of them sound fine. So let me listen. The other one had some weirdness too, but I can't remember what. But it looks like it's less noisy. But let's take a listen to this one. So soft. Medium soft again. So it looks like in both attempts, my medium soft hit on the rack tom had a glitch, and that's just so weird. I don't understand why Reaper suddenly is. I've usually never had any problems with Reaper, but today I did. So what I think I'll do, maybe for the rack tom, I can get away with just having 3 different dynamics on there. And I think that should be fine. So for the first one, or for the rack tom, though, I'm going to use this less noisy, the second take, which seems to be better than the first take. So let's hear this. Go a little bit longer. Okay, so let's go to export. Rack tom soft. Sorry, I'm getting WhatsApp messages while I'm doing this. All right, now let's do rack tom medium. Rack tom medium. Okay. And then finally, rack tom loud. Now for the rest of these, I'm not really going to show you because I'm going to keep doing the same thing to all of them, just exporting individual loud, medium soft, or soft, medium loud, and then loud for all the samples. And then once I get to that stage, then I'll come back and show you the rest. Okay, so here I am within Ableton Live, and I already started on the kick drum samples, and I'm going to go through this step by step, so don't worry. I'm going to show you how I did it, but what you're looking at on the screen right now is, if you notice here, I have kick soft, kick medium soft, kick loud, or kick medium loud, and then kick loud. And these are all within a single drum rack sample slot on the Ableton drum rack. And the way that I was able to do this, well, I'll show you that here in a second, but let me just give it a little example. If I start tapping my MIDI controller, you can see if I'm doing it very softly, and look at this area right here, and you see that little black line that shows up there, and that shows you which sample is being triggered. This is the soft. It just goes out from whichever one is written here, and you can see this bar shows you which sample is being triggered. But let me show you. So there, as you can see, it's a pretty realistic depiction of different levels of hitting the kick drum. Four different ones. All right, so what I'm going to do is do the same thing on the snare. All right, well, the easiest way then would be to actually look at the MIDI file itself. And to do that, I could click here and go into the MIDI file and find where that snare comes in. And so that's going to be D1. All right, so D1 is my snare. And I'm going to go back to the drum rack in Ableton. And my little screen recorder toolbar is in the way of my, can I move this out of here? In the way of what I need to do in Ableton. I just rearrange this a bit. All right. Okay, so we'll go into the drum rack and find D1, which is right there. And so what I'm going to do is find my soft snare first. So I'm going to go to snare soft, right there, drag that onto D1. Okay, now what I'm going to do is right click on the sample area, and I'm going to go to simpler to sampler. Now, simpler is Ableton's more lightweight version of the sampler. Sampler has more features. And if you're using live intro like me, you will not have sampler by default. You have to actually purchase sampler from Ableton. It doesn't come with intro. If you have any other version of Ableton, intro will be there. So, sampler will be there. So you don't have to worry about it. But if you're using intro, you're going to have to purchase it, or this won't work. So anyway, just thought I'd let you know that. So now we're in here in the sample. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go here to zone. And then once that expands, we're going to go to the velocity section. And now what I'm going to do is select all my other samples for snare. I'm going to take the medium soft sample and drag it right there. Medium loud right here. Snare loud right here. Okay, and now I'm going to arrange my velocities to correspond. Oh, before I do that, sorry, I forgot something. What we're going to do first is actually right-click on the actual sample itself and go to normalize volumes on all of them, so we get a consistent volume on all the samples. That's going to correspond with how you play the drum too. Okay, now once we do that, we can start dragging our zones to basically only play, like, so now the snare soft sample is only going to play when we're in this range of velocity, which means hitting it from very, very soft 0 up to 40. And then we're going to set this one somewhere in the next range. You know, this is up to you where you want them to actually cut off. You may want to play with it a bit, but I try to make them even-ish. Maybe the super soft one is a little bit more than the rest, just depending on what you want to do. Let's change this a little bit. Go up to 104 from the super loud. And let's bring this one, oops. You don't want to drag this little bar. just this one. Let's go back to 33 on that one, 34 on that one. And now let's hear how that sounds. All right, so let's go ahead and rewind to the beginning and hear this. Let me mute my audio channel. Oops. Okay, so that's the kick drum. Here comes the snare. All right, so you can hear the different levels happening there on the snare drum. And that's pretty cool. I'm already starting to get really excited about this. Let me hear that all again. Wow. That's very nice. Okay, so very, very cool. Now you can hear the different dynamic velocities happening, basically corresponding with how hard you hit the actual drum. So this is going to sound really realistic once I get it all completed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and, well, I'll show you one more. Let's do one more, and then I'm going to kind of cut out because I don't want this video to get boring. And then I'll come back once I have the whole thing completed so you guys can hear it. But let's go ahead and do one more together. And also, oh, another thing I forgot to tell you is on the drum rack itself, what you can do here is you click save right there. And now you can create your own, basically, so you don't have to do this again. Once you have it created, you can save it here. So I already did one. You could see my old one there. This is Imperial Star Multi-Layer. That was when I first played around with this idea and I used some old samples I had. So now this is going to be much better, though, than that one because these are all new samples. So I'm going to do Multi-Layer 2020. Just press Enter. And now as you go along, you want to keep saving it just in case you crash or something like that, that you don't lose all of your work. Our next track is, or our next drum is going to be, let's re-enable the audio here so I can tell what I'm playing. And I'm going to delete this MIDI track because it's kind of in the way. Let's get rid of that. And this audio track. All right, so let's listen to this again. Okay, so Rack Tom is the next one. I don't know why this isn't following, but so right here is Rack Tom. And we are at what? Let's take a look at that. All right, so that's the Rack Tom right there. And that is on D2. Now, I can't remember if I changed my MIDI settings on my Nitro or not, like what notes it's actually sending out. I may have, so yours might be a little bit different than this. I don't remember. But you can figure it out just the way I'm doing it right now. Just record some MIDI and then just take a look at where it's actually getting recorded. And this one, like I said, is D2. So let's go back to the drum rack plugin. And find D2 on here, which is right there. Okay, now I'm going to find go back to my samples here and find Rack Tom. Soft. Right click, go. You have to right click on the actual toolbar of the simpler, and then simpler to sampler. Click on zone, then go to velocity, And then let's drag in our other samples. Oh, this one I only have 3, but I think it's okay. Unfortunately. Oh yeah, well, you could do this before or after normalizing. It doesn't really matter. But just make sure you remember to normalize the samples in Ableton at some point. Oops, wrong one. All right, now let's make sure all of these are normalized. Normalize volumes. Normalize volumes. Normalize volumes. All right, now let's hear this. Let me find it. Pretty cool. Okay, I think this is going to work really, really well. So like I said, I'm going to pause the video for now, and I'm going to work all of this out and then show you the end result. Okay, I got it all done, and I have some final notes for you guys, just some other tips and tricks. But before I go through all that, let's take a listen to how it sounds. Okay, now the cymbals are by far the weakest parts, and I'll explain why that is. But I think I have another solution for that that I'm going to try later. Kind of my 2.0 version of this. But for now, I think it's pretty darn good. I'm pretty happy with the way it sounds. Real soft there. Now let me go back and so you can compare it to the other sound. Take a listen. There is the built-in sounds. Now, see, I was using my Tom 2 there, and I mapped that as the ride cymbal. That's why I played it like that on purpose, because I wanted a separate, I wanted the Tom 2 as the ride, and then the edge, the bell. Now let's switch back. Okay, so a couple of little tips here that I wanted to mention. First off, on the hi-hat, what you're going to want to do is anywhere that you have a hi-hat sample, you're going to want to basically add them to choke groups, or the same choke group. And to do that, we're going to go in here to the drum rack and click this little button right here. And then you'll also have to click this little I/O button right here to show the choke groups. And then that way you can put all the hi-hats, open hi-hat, all the different hi-hat sounds, closed hi-hat, hi-hat pedals, everything on the same choke group. So that way when you hit the open hi-hat and then you press down on the pedal, it cuts off that open hi-hat. Okay, now one little drawback to the way the cymbals work and the way that the drum rack works in Ableton. Let me go ahead and see if I can find a good example here. If we go to the, where was I? Oh, right, the cymbals. So let me find the ride. Okay, so one thing you might notice that if we go down, like if we go from a hard hit on the ride to a soft hit, it sounds pretty unnatural. Because the way that the drum rack works is that basically everything that's on this pad or on a single pad, like say the ride cymbal, where is it? Ride cymbal's right here. It's basically on a choke group of its own. That's basically this pad itself is a choke group. And you can kind of help a little bit. You'll see here I did crossfades between the velocities. And the problem doesn't happen if you go from soft to loud. It only sounds a little unnatural if you go from loud to soft. Now, I do think that there's a way around this, and what it will involve is basically putting the different ride velocities on different pads and then mapping them to the same note on the keyboard, which I'm pretty sure I can do using the key section right here. But today it's been like an all-day adventure for this thing, and it's already almost 6 p.m. And so I wanted to just stop where I am right now, and I think this sounds pretty good how it is. And I think it's actually kind of cool in a way. It almost gives it a neat effect. Like when I'm playing here, let me play this back a little bit. Maybe it wasn't there. Over here. Here. It almost gives it like a slight, very slight DJ kind of sound, like almost like a sample, like vinyl. I don't know. To me, it sounds interesting. It's interesting enough to leave it there. And then what I'll probably do is make a second version of this where it's not like that, where I'm going to try to map them to different pads, but triggered by the same note. And that should take care of that problem. Now, another thing you're going to want to do too is when you open up this, when I showed you to do the choke groups, this is basically your mixer for all the different samples. So here you can adjust the balance and the pans between the individual drums. And you'll notice here I had to raise my kick a little bit. I brought down some of the cymbals. I did my panning. And well, it actually looks like right here is where you could select the note receive. So you probably could set those to, I haven't tried this yet, but set them to the same note, on different pads. And I think that should work as far as the cymbals go to take care of that problem that I was talking about with the ride. But hopefully all of this made sense to you. I know this is a lot. I mean, it's a lot of work, and it may not be for everybody to do this, but I think it's really cool, and I'm really glad to have like my own drum set sounds in here. So I'm going to be able to record some new stuff, and then when I want to, I could go in and replace all the drum sounds and make them sound exactly the way I want. And I just think it's really cool. To me, this is almost cooler than using something like Easy Drummer or whatever that thing's called, because for this you get your own unique sound. On those, like, you're kind of getting a store-bought sound, and they sound like they sound good. They sound very polished and very good, but at the same time they kind of sound generic too, and they all kind of sound the same. So this is a way to get something really unique, and I think that will sound really awesome once it's all done. I can't wait to do a song and use these drums in it. Once I do that, I'll definitely post something about it and let you guys know how it sounds so you can hear it. But again, this is another reason why Ableton Live, I think, is just such a great piece of software. I mean, these are the tools that are just built into Ableton Live that you can do this with. I'm not sure if you could do this on, I know you can't do it in Reaper, or at least not this easily. And plus all the problems I was having with Reaper today, it really kind of was bothering me. But, like I said, usually I love Reaper and I don't have a problem with it, but today it was just a little bit weird. But anyway, hopefully you guys learned something from all this stuff, and thanks for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. And if you're unclear on anything, just ask me. I'll do my best to try to help you out if I left anything out or forgot anything. I know it's a lot of information and a lot to figure out how to do, but it can totally be done. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great day.